Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Eric Yazuski from the Domestic Violence Project, Inc., DVPI. Who are you for?
We are for the people. We are for the victims and especially for the survivors of domestic violence. So we, in that all-encompassing for the people, men, women, children, people in the LGBTQI community, we really do aim to serve everyone at DVPI. And, I just mentioned men. Typically, people don't think that men are or should be victims of domestic violence or survivors of domestic violence. But we've seen kind of a continuing growing trend of more men are starting to reach out, are starting to seek our services even more. So it's an across-the-board thing. It doesn't just affect the female gender. And, with children especially, we have a couple of different outlet programs for kids through our art therapy, our music therapy. We have different things to really kind of fit everyone's needs broadly.
I was just going to ask you if you see any trends. And it's interesting that you mentioned men. I would think that would be very embarrassing for a guy to say, my wife's abusing me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that, in the culture that we live in nowadays, we still do live in a fairly macho culture. And, just like you were saying, it's an embarrassing thing for some men to talk about. Even just talking about domestic violence is a touchy subject with some men. But being able to actually come out and say, hey, I'm a victim and I'm a survivor and I also need to use these services, it's a very, very touchy subject. But it's something we've continued to see, through social media, things like that. It's not only about empowering women to make good choices to get out of abusive relationships, but men as well. So I think people are a little disillusioned when they truly do believe that domestic violence only focuses on females. So,
and let's talk about you.
Sure.
Eric Yazuski is Director of Events and Volunteers at DVPI. When I had done some volunteer work with them in the past, no men allowed near that place. So I find it very interesting that you are now employed there. How did that come about?
Yeah, it totally just a different set of circumstances. But for me especially, working at DVPI, it has helped us to continue, just like I spoke about a moment ago, to kind of break that stereotype that only women should be working in this field, or, something along those lines. And really, it's been interesting because it's given me the opportunity to see the complete opposite side of the coin. Thankfully, I've never encountered it firsthand in my family, but this has given me a much more broad scope and perspective on physical abuse, mental abuse, victims, survivors, and for me especially, that was kind of one of the things whenever I had interviewed for the position. They said, you'll be working with the majority of women. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So people have gotten very used to me being around at all of our events, in and out of the shelters. But it's kind of one of those things that it's a bit of a stereotype where we think that only women kind of can understand it. But like you had said previously, we're really trying to get men more involved with things like our Walk a Mile in Our Shoes event, Take Back the Night. So it's been interesting, but it's been great.
Where do you think you get this heart for people who are suffering in this way?
I think that, having my own faith values, it's one of those things that in our culture today, in the world we live in today, so many people are kind of focused on just themselves or just their family and getting by day to day. And I think that something that really touches my heart is that it gives me an opportunity to serve people here in Stark County. When my wife and I had moved home from Indianapolis, that was one of our main goals, was to be somewhere where we could make an impact with people, with actual people every day. And this has been that opportunity. So I enjoy it. It's different. It's totally different than anything I've ever done, but it really does. I think, when you're able to make an impact locally and to work with people in your communities, that's what it's all about. So
let's talk about the services. What services can people find at DVPI?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, our emergency shelters. We do operate 2 of those, one in Canton, one in Massillon. As I mentioned earlier in the program, our Renew Recovery and Counseling Center, where we provide all types of counseling and services through there. Along with our shelter, we also have our transitional housing service, which for clients that have exited our program for up to 2 years after they have been out of the program, we're able to provide them with rent assistance. So they're able to find a safe home to live in after exiting our services, and for 2 years afterwards, we help them with rent assistance. So we also offer multiple counseling services, as well as the hotline, and then all of our awareness and outreach. Joy, who is our new prevention director, Joy does a great job. She's out in our schools all the time, teaching kids about safe dates, what abuse looks like early on, because that's kind of a stark reality of nowadays, is that abuse, both physical abuse, substance abuse, it's happening at a younger and younger age. So Joy, our prevention director, has done a great job of being out in the community and letting people know what services we have available too.
Pretty awesome. How do we contact you again? Let's give the hotline again.
Absolutely. 330-453-7233. That's 330-453-SAFE. And I should mention also in the services that we're able to provide, one of the largest parts for DVPI2 is our legal advocacy program. So when clients are involved in domestic disputes or are navigating the court systems, one of the most confusing things is navigating the court systems. How many people on a regular basis are in and out of court, dealing with attorneys? So Linda, with our legal advocacy program, fantastic. Really, they serve close to, I want to say, 1,500 clients a year, and they provide everything you could think of from start to finish with the legal process. So they really are there. They're an advocate for our clients. And again, you can reach them through calling our main hotline too. So
it really takes a brave person, doesn't it, to pick up, even because sometimes the bad that seems to be better than the bad you don't know. The future can seem so uncertain. If you're getting out of an abusive situation, you don't want to jump out of the frying pan and end up in the fire.
Sure.
So what does it take for a person to be able to leave that abusive situation, contact you, uproot their children, possibly move them out of a school, but to know that someone's going to take their hand and help them for not just this, but then for 2 years after, really make sure that they're back on their feet. What does it take to get from there to there?
Courage. A huge amount of courage. And, as you just mentioned, the fact that you may feel extremely cut off from your family, your friends, from your coworkers, but it's important to also know that there are people there that are there for you, even though you may not know them yet, especially at DVPI. But it takes an immense amount of courage to be able to make that call or to be able to get in contact with DVPI in some facet. I have so much admiration for the people that are able to do that, because sometimes, it's hard to call people back sometimes that, if there's something you've been waiting on or you've been trying to get in touch with somebody, sometimes it's difficult to make a connection on the phone. And so really, when people do make that effort to reach out, it takes an immense amount of courage. So I totally applaud them.
Is there anything available that you know of for the abuser?
Yeah, actually, we do have at our Take Back the Night program, we've had several agencies there. I believe Mellambrosia is one of them, and there are different batterers intervention programs too. So with the cycle of abuse, it's important to note that we don't just focus on the survivor or the victim, but there are services available out there. If you head to our website, www.dvpi.org, I believe we have links to some of those resources too, but that's a huge part of the circle and the cycle of violence is that it's not just focusing on one party. So if we can help people get resources to getting out of that lifestyle and out of that mentality of being an abuser, we're going to try and get them as many resources and put them in touch with people to do so.
Got an upcoming event,
Absolutely.
Project North Pole. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Project North Pole. It's almost the end of October, but I'm already looking forward to Christmas. It's one of my absolute favorite times of the year.
Yeah.
The weather has said otherwise lately, but Project North Pole is our annual sponsorship program for both our shelters in Canton and Massillon, as well as our clients in Renew and in Shelter. And basically what it is that families, companies, corporations, neighbors, people throughout the community are able to sign up to be a sponsor for families or the shelters at DVPI. It's a very interesting program because it truly gives these families the opportunity to have a bit of a bright spot when otherwise it's pretty dark for them, you know. So it's our annual Christmas sponsorship program, and we'll have lots of that information coming out. It'll be available via our website, again, dvpi.org, and on our Facebook page. So if people are interested in making an impact locally and directly, it's a great way to get involved. So we, on average, last year and the year before, we served close to about 120 families through that program, and that says a lot about our communities here in Stark County, that many people are willing to band together to go out and do good things for other people that they don't even know. So
how does it work? Do you adopt that family, basically, what they need for Christmas? And is there a list of their needs?
Yeah.
Is a Christmas meal provided or included in that? Tell me
Sure.
what that looks like.
Sure. For us, most of the time, the clients will put together a wish list. So just like kids, write their letters to Santa every year, families will put together wish lists. Some of them are things that are wants, like toys, things of that nature, fun stuff.
Sure.
Some of the things are very realistic needs because, as you mentioned earlier, we do have, most of the time, clients come to us with basically very little. If they're fleeing an abusive situation, they don't have a lot of time to take much with them. So a lot of times on request lists, it's very basic things like underwear, socks, things in that realm. And then especially with the shelters, sponsoring the shelters involves things that most of us probably take advantage of every day or, take for granted. Toilet paper, paper towels, hand soap, Clorox wipes, dishwashing detergent, everything that we use on a daily basis are things that help us immensely at DVPI. So really, those are kind of the ways that you're able to get involved. You are more than welcome to sponsor more than one family, a person. You can put in requests and say, hey, financially, this is all I can do. I can do a single person, or I could do a family of 8. So it's a great way for churches, youth groups, places like that to really get involved too.
So participate and or to
Absolutely.
become a volunteer or anything,
Yeah.
the website's the best way?
Website's best way. It's got my contact information on there for the volunteers, but then also it'll have all the info for Project North Pole up there and how to get involved with it.
dvpi.org.
Yes, ma'am.
Eric Yazeski, thank you so much for all you do in our community.
Susie, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.